it's going to rain less in coastal areas. And this may mean that there's going to be less water available for agriculture, which is usually in the lowland. Plus, if forest decrease continues, there may also be more erosion and siltation due to saltwater intrusion in coastal areas. Next. Yeah, we can also skip that in terms of agriculture. What this map would, they have tried to model sea level rise with impacts on resettlement, etc. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the conclusions. Now, this is a map that shows how Silago integrated all parts of its territory into one zoning map, which forms the basis for each zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is the main regulatory instrument for a local government unit to prescribe what type of uses are allowed for what type of land. And of course, in terms of climate change adaptation, this is very, very important, because the local government unit can actually say this is protection forest, this is production forest, this is marine protected areas, and this is exactly what they did here. And to my knowledge, there's very few municipalities at this moment who are doing it. So the first result basically is that all these things were integrated. Coastal planning, forest planning, disaster risk management. There's a lot of conflicts in that area as well, in terms of boundary conflicts, etc. So this is actually forming the basis now for the municipal ordinance, which is currently at the reading at the Sangguniang Panlalawigan. Next. Basically, it's a stylized, based on the other map, it's a stylized map where the zones are a little bit clearer. I think it's about 8 different zones, which can actually also further be subdivided. Next. So basically, 2 minutes. I really try to be fast. Just make it 3 minutes, okay? Negotiation, right? There's 2 main points here I would like to make. First of all, as I said earlier, replicating the study is not really quite an option. So some of the recommendations for this LGU in terms of investments for the adaptation options, for example, the first one, identification relocation sites based on sea level rise projections, you can really only do that when you have the data. If you don't have the data, it's going to be extremely difficult for you. But if you look at the other options that Silago is going to take, these are options where you don't need an expensive study. We call them the no-regret options. These are things that you can do at any point in time. Like, for example, invest in remaining forests, extend reforestation, including mangroves, using co-mentioning DNR. You don't need any kind of study. That's simply something you can do. Establish more marine protected areas. Same. Establish public water enterprise to improve water supply for households and agriculture. You can do that. Invest in crop diversification, disaster prevention. Do that. You don't need a lot of data for that. So what I'm basically saying is there's a lot of things that local governments can do without having expensive studies, and there's a lot of things they can do in terms of mitigation as well. I would always argue that adaptation and mitigation are very difficult to differentiate at a certain level, because if you replant your forest, you automatically invest in mitigation. So I think the discussion earlier probably is also kind of, for the local level, kind of not so relevant. It's more of a, let's say, argumentation, of course, in international negotiations. But if you look at the local level, I think you can actually hit 2 birds with 1 stone. Now, I'm using my last minute on the next slide. Maybe what can be done with GIZ and with our partner agencies? We're trying to roll out this planning approach that is trying to make it easier for local government units to come up with a true ecosystem approach, planning and management approach. And next slide. So the innovation is basically that this covers all lands, not only public land or not only private land. It covers all lands, and it provides some crucial tools that we have tried to make simpler. And it's also lowering costs, because it comes with some sort of institutional assistance for local government units. Trying to see what I can skip. Yeah, if we could just go to my last slide with the recommendations. Next. Thanks. This one. In terms of recommendations, of course, we have heard that earlier. It's always would be nice to improve the legal framework for spatial land use planning, cadastral system, and also regulations for land acquisition. But these are national policy issues. That is not my topic. Overlap in policy mandates would be also nice to see. I think the NALUA bill has tried to address that. Strengthen oversight. I think there's a lot of things that can be done in order to improve compliance, even given the current policy framework. Strengthen local capacities for land use planning. I think there's a lot of room to improvement, especially using no-regret options. We don't have to hide behind, say, we don't have the data. There's a lot of things we can do without necessarily having to have expensive things in the background. And last but not least, I think it's crucial for the Philippines to adopt an ecosystem approach to end management for selected areas isolated from the whole picture. I think this would really, really be a big help, not only in terms of adaptation, but also in terms of mitigation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andreas Lange. So we learned that the comprehensive land use plan is the first defense against climate change disasters to make to have a more effective climate resilient disaster risk reduction management system. And Dr. Andreas Lange has given us this new framework, the simple, it's nice, simple, sustainable, integrated management and planning LGU systems. Okay, so that's one thing we learned from his presentation, and we will learn more from his paper, which we are going to publish it. So that will compensate for the lack of time. Now, our next speaker will talk about the climate change adaptation in Sorsogon City. We will draw inspiration. Well, things are getting technical, but the experiences of these LGUs will hopefully inspire us to start with our own climate change adaptation measures and strategies. Mr. Guido, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Florano. For information, the professor here has witnessed in person the climate initiatives of Sorsogon City. And also I would like to thank the previous speakers who have given us the proper perspective in discussing climate change issues. So to the organizers, guests and participants of this international conference on public administration and governance, good afternoon. Indeed, we are very honored to have been given the opportunity to share our experience on climate change and local government in Sorsogon City. But before anything else, I would like to congratulate my dear alma mater on its 60th founding anniversary. Mabuhay tayong lahat. Next. To some of you who may not be familiar yet with Sorsogon City, it is the capital of the province of Sorsogon and the administrative, commercial, and educational center of the province. It is a small but developing city in the southernmost part of Luzon, the biggest island of the Philippine archipelago. Since 1991, local governments has been decentralized even to the level of barangay as the smallest political unit of the country, thus a free hand for the local leaders in the administration and implementation of programs and projects, beneficial and locally adaptable. Today, let me share with you how we have tried and are still trying to address the impacts of climate change and pursue disaster risk reduction. But we do not know what my objective in this sharing is to showcase and stress the fact that cities, or should I say local governments, need to take on a major role in climate change adaptation. Cities hold a major key in climate change actions, considering the magnitude of population we cater to, the development activities we are working on, and the role we play in economic development. As such, we need to work hand in hand with the national government in addressing the challenges we are facing due to changes in climate, changes which definitely could alter how we think, plan, and do things. It can never be business as usual anymore. Again, the devastating typhoons that wrought havoc to our country have proven these points. Okay, 5 years ago, we have heard about global warming, but we did not know what really is or what will be its effects on us. Thinking that we're just a small city compared to those developed and industrialized cities that pollute the environment, we believe that it had minimal or no effect on us. It was only in 2008 when Sorsogon City became fully aware of the climate change and its impacts when a partnership with UN Habitat was formalized through an agreement of cooperation. We then started by accepting the fact that our knowledge on climate change is still very limited and we need to enhance our capacities. Okay? Hence, we mobilized partnerships locally, nationally, and internationally to gain more information and learn from existing knowledge base. Our Vulnerability and Adaptation Assessment, or what we call VNAA, was mainly driven by the city's concern in identifying our hotspot areas. Areas that, if affected, would impede our city development in general, as our bottom line is the welfare of the people. Given our mandate, the assessment looked into who and how people will be affected given the timelines of projections and scenarios. Reality checks. What had Sorsogon City realized through the VNAA assessment? Climate change threats put at risk our natural and built environment as well as our economic base. So as you can see from the slide, that the 3 columns, one under the climate-driven phenomena, the risk effects, and the critical impact areas. Bottom line, it is putting the future of our city at risk. After agreeing to have the goal of enhancing the city's capacity for climate change resilience and responsiveness, together with the local stakeholders and partners, we asked ourselves these questions. When climate change-related disasters strike, what aspects are immediately damaged or disrupted that constrains people to bounce back? What are the core issues why such aspects face immediate damage? What are the factors that would help avoid these damages? Also, what are the opportunities that are coming along the way which we could leverage for resiliency? With these, we therefore focused on the interaction of people, places, and institutions and their respective factors that require actions. And to zero in on our priorities. These are the key processes we took and the outputs they have yielded. With the VNAA results on hand, the city called on a multi-stakeholder meeting to validate the findings and agreed on the long list of issues and priorities. Our city government then took on the responsibility to technically look at the issues by further assessing who will be heavily burdened, who and what needs immediate action, what resources do we have that are available. The answers to these queries led us to define a short list of priorities. In the same process, proposition papers or summary paper were developed in order to further analyze and highlight the issues. Major strategy options gathered from the validation meeting, city technical review, and other previous activities, including the VNAA, were also highlighted in the proposition papers. The papers were then discussed in a multi-stakeholder city consultation. The discussions during the said event led to an agreement on the priority actions and in the formation of issue working groups, or IWGS.